Good morning. So, I'm excited. They're releasing the live action Death Note with Willem motherfucking Dafoe. Yes, not safe for work. I'm sorry, I forgot to add the disclaimer. Crap. Okay. Anyways, sorry. Going forward. But yeah, I'm super excited. Death Note is one of my favorite animes. It's definitely up in the top 5 easily for one of the animes, and I've watched it way too many times, more than I'd like to admit, and we'll end up watching it again based on what I've seen from the trailers and everything here, just because once I've seen what they're trying to do, a retelling of the story, and I can appreciate that. And of course, the only problem is whenever there's any kind of retelling of a story or any port from a like any show that comes from Japan or any movie that comes from Japan is immediately under any kind of scrutiny, especially right now, because right now the thing that sells and the thing that people will read online is anything that comes remotely close to racist, because it's such a hot topic right now. So of course any writer out there is taking advantage of the time to find any excuse to call something whitewashing, racist, or whatever it may be, because they're trying to get more clicks and get more readers to expand their reader base. So, you know. Anyways, reader base. I don't even think that's a word. I digress. I'll keep moving. But, so basically the way it starts out is, hello, honey. Oh, yes. Turns out they're making a new show, in a new movie, and it's based on a show that came from Japan. Are all the actors Asian? No, it looks like it's kind of got a scattering of ethnicities throughout it. Oh, it's whitewashing! And I'm like, whoa, hold on a second. It's not always whitewashing. Sometimes, depending on the story. Let me give you a good example here. Without delving too deep into the details, because I don't want to actually ruin the story for anybody who hasn't seen the movie or watched the show. But we'll just say, just for the basis of the story, that in the anime version of Death Note, the main character of the movie, of the show, is Light Yagami. And Light Yagami is Japanese, very Japanese. The name itself pretty much gives it away. And he lives in a Japanese family, and he lives in the city of Fuyuki, Japan. So yes, everything there is very set in the Japanese world. In fact, there's 90% of the characters in the show are Japanese, because based in Fuyuki, Japan, or based in Japan in general, they're going with what is more closely resembles our Japan, which is that 99% of the population, or 98% of the population, I think is what it was, is Japanese. So it makes sense that most of the characters would be Japanese within that particular setting. This retelling of the story they're doing is based on somebody, I believe his name's Light Turner, which I'm kind of like, in Japanese, naming somebody Light because it's like a name from another, like it's a word from another country, and then Yagami together. Putting those together is fine. It totally makes sense. That is, unless that's the translate. Anyways, I digress. That part I kind of fumbled on. But, I don't know. I kind of have to, question people's parenting. I'm like, Light. Come on now. In America, your kid's going to get crucified by naming your kid Light. Turn on the light. Oh, fuck off. Light up 420, bro. I mean, it takes place in Seattle, Washington. This story does. So, I mean, really, they're really pushing for it. It's gonna cause, so this kid's gonna grow up miserable. So maybe that's the premise of the story I haven't seen yet, because it's a new retelling of the story. But let me put it this way, just demographically speaking, 69% of Seattle is white. I grabbed that up, and I'm sure there's plenty of other sources where the percentage has some skew-ity to it, where it ranges, but 69% is the consensus that I found is for white people, and 14% actually is pretty high for the city, for Asian population in Seattle, but it's still kind of a small demographic by comparison. So I don't when they made, Light Turner this white kid, for the movie, I wasn't exactly screaming about it, because I'm like, okay, no, I think the biggest issue, the thing that drives me crazy, is all these people are trying to claim whitewashing and freaking out about that, when what they really should be upset about is more about the portrayal of the character than it is about, or the writing of the new character, than it is for the background they're set in, or the ethnicity they chose to put them in. everyone's freaking out. I mean, there's people online who are like, "Oh, I'm angry that the character L is black," and I'm like, "No, that doesn't bother me at all." What does bother me is the very big character change. Like I said, without going into detail, just from commercials based alone, it seems that it's showing, the character L to be very angry and passionate and forward, and that's not who the character was. And if this is a retelling of it, like I said, I can kind of, it's kind of like, okay, I guess I can accept that. I guess this is the direction they want to take. But I guess if I was, as a fan of this anime, I'm more upset that they would take the character of L, who is very methodical, very calm. Even in the worst of situations, he still basically keeps his calm for the most part. I mean, there's never a point where, I mean, you could see his range of emotions from, like, maybe depressed sometimes, but straight out anger is a rarity. Like, there's actually no moment where he completely loses his cool or anything like that. It's very much, like, even, like, I think the worst I remember him being upset about was something happened and he was like, "Damn it." And he, it was just a damn it, like, just an expletive. Like, that was him letting it out, like he was frustrated. But he wasn't, he wasn't flinging stuff across the table or breaking stuff or anything like that, because that wasn't him. His character was very intelligent, and I think that's the only issue I'm having, is that it's not the fact that the characters are being whitewashed or ethnicity lines are being crossed or whatever it may be. My biggest issue is the fact that the characters themselves are it seems like the characters themselves aren't being told the right, not being told in the right way. Like, they're not being as true to the characters they could be. And understanding that it is a retelling of the story, I'm hoping that when I watch the movie, it'll be more clear to me as to why they chose to take this direction with the writing. But I don't think that the whitewashing issue is the main issue here. Like, that's not the main concern I would have with Death Note as a whole. It would more be the fact that the characters are not written as intelligently as they are within the anime themselves. And maybe that's because they have to rush the storyline along, because it's such a they have to do such a condensed format. Because, I mean, you figure the show had, I think it was well over 25 episodes if you just refer to everything that's basically what they call canon. A little over 20 episodes, something around that lot. I always forget. And then there's they continued it from beyond the manga to increase it later on, but yeah, that's the only thing I have an issue with it. But I'm going to come away from Death Note because I've already talked enough about it that I've given some depth to the story. Not a lot of it, but I don't want to talk about any more details or anything like that. I could go on and on about it, and I probably will, and I'll just in another video, once I've watched it, to compare, just to really dive deep into it. But then I'll have a big disclaimer at the beginning about how it's a bunch of spoilers, and so I won't catch anybody off guard. But basically, this is just this was mostly just a conversation about the whole whitewashing thing, and here a good example of what I would consider whitewashing, because I do believe whitewashing can be a thing. Even in Ghost in the Shell, if you watch if you actually look up pictures of the characters across multiple things, I think that you'll find that a lot of the time in anime, they don't like to just put an entire cast of just Asian people, because it's boring. Unlike a lot of our shows in America, where, yeah, they do a lot of white people. It is a lot of white people with, like, one token ethnicity. And, I don't think it's as interesting a medium that way, which is probably why I enjoy anime a little more. But there are some animes that actually do have a large cast of just Japanese characters. For example, the one that comes to mind as of the most recent case that I can think of is Tokyo Ghoul, is a show that has plenty of Japanese characters, straight up Japanese. You can't argue that they're not Japanese characters. And if that came over to America and all of a sudden all the characters are white, I'd be like, all right, that's pretty blatant. It's some pretty blatant whitewashing. Here's an example of the reverse. If you've ever watched, this is also another recent show, if you've ever watched Attack on Titan, people assume that, like, oh, all these characters would be Japanese because it's from Japan and it's Asian, but you'd be wrong, because most of the characters in Attack on Titan, there's literally one Japanese woman in the entire show, and that's it. Like, she's the one Asian woman, and everybody else is white, German, and all these other pretty much every other ethnicity. I think the only people they're actually missing is I don't think there's a black guy in Attack on Titan. I think it's like the one thing they're missing. But in Japan, they're doing a live action of Attack on Titan, and it's an entire Asian cast. The entire cast is Asian. But I guarantee, because it's not sensationalized in Japan, I guarantee there's not a bunch of white writers over in Japan going, "Oh, this is yellow washing! Yellow washing! There's no white people in here," because they're not a bunch of, they're not a bunch of people looking to ride the train on cultural insensitivity. Especially when a lot of the time the people who are writing these articles have never watched anime in their life. I guarantee they've looked up a picture of one character and gone, okay, they look kind of Asian, so I guess that means if they're white in the story, that must mean it's whitewashing. And basically, I just think right now, whitewashing is just such one of those things that's become a hot word, and people just like to use it in order to get more clicks and get more views on their articles, and it's really rampant and out of the way. But this video is getting a little longer than I wanted it to be, so I'll probably pick this up again later, and I'll actually try to incorporate some demographics into it, and I'll pull up some anime and actually pull some pictures and do it that way too. God, I wish I'd stop spitting. Stupid dehydration. Anyways, that's all I'm saying for now. That's just my opinion on the whole Death Note thing and everything. I'm excited to see the movie tonight, and yeah, I think it's going to be good, and I'll be able to write a synopsis afterwards, or a review afterwards for the movie, and really touch on the differences between the show and the anime, with as little plot revealing as I can, because I don't want it to completely devolve it, because nobody watches the show. It's really good, and I don't believe that the show and the movie are going to have the exact same twists and turns, and I think even if you know the destination of the movie at the end of it, or even if you know the ending of the movie or the show, the path to get there is really what defines it. So I'd highly recommend anyone, if you haven't, once you've seen the movie, go ahead and watch the anime itself, if anime is your thing. And if it's not your thing, maybe try this one, because Death Note's probably one of the first animes I would recommend to somebody to watch if they're going to start watching